All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesday. My name is Vanessa with ITS Communications. Today, we're going to be talking about Microsoft Visio. We've got two people on the call today that are going to help us learn more about Visio and how to access it. We've got Josh Gural, who's our O365 Product Manager. He's going to be talking you through it, how you can access it, the differences in the versions that we have, and how you can do some quick things within Visio to help you make diagrams. We also have Rafael Supa, who's our O365 messaging and collaboration manager. And while he's not going to be demonstrating so much, we are expecting quite a few people on today's session. So if you've got any questions at all, put them in the chat and we'll be answering as many as we can. Hopefully we can answer all of them today. And if not, we'll definitely answer them in the follow-up email. Just so everybody is aware, again, we are expecting quite a few people, so everyone is on mute. Again, any questions at any time, just pop them in the chat. And we're recording the session, so if there's something that you miss or you want to share with colleagues perhaps later on, we'll be sending a follow-up email with a link to the recording as well as other helpful guides that you can use when you start using Visio as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Josh. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Vanessa. I appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for joining. I'll jump right into it because we do have a pretty full agenda. But keep in mind, please stop me at any point to ask any questions. Like Vanessa mentioned, Raf and Vanessa are going to be taking a look at the chat. And if anything pops up, we'll pause and take a look. So the agenda, as you can see here, we're just going to do a little introduction about me as I'm pretty new to Weill Cornell Medicine. Then we'll talk about what is Visio and why is it useful. Then a lot of you may be wondering how much it is there additional cost, licenses for this? We'll discuss all of that in the next section. Then we'll talk about where do I access it? So, if you have access, when you have access, how do I get to it? And then we're actually going to do a couple of live demos here. So keep in mind in the chat if you have any questions that might frame how the demo takes shape. So feel free to ask away as we go. So just a little bit about me. I am the new product manager for Microsoft 365 here at Weill Cornell Medicine in the ITS department. I started here in June. Have a long history of consulting and similar roles in the 365 space before that. So my work responsibilities are Office 365, Power Platform, workflow optimization, new releases, things like that. If you ever want to have some water cooler conversations with me, there's some personal interests there as well. So we'll jump right in. So what is Visio? Visio is a tool in the 365 toolkit, along with things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. So keep in mind it is one of the many tools. There may be a use for it, there may be not a use for it, depending on your use case. But it's a way to transform complicated text and tables into a visual diagram. So translating information visually, there's all kinds of different learners. I know myself, I'm a very visual learner, hands-on learner. It's easier for me to grasp concepts sometimes if it's organized within a table or a chart like this. It's easy to communicate information at a glance. So if you're making something to maybe be printed out or for the banner of a web page, something like that, people can take a look at it and quickly see areas of interest. According to Microsoft, I stole this section from them, but getting started with Visio is really easy. It could be 3 steps. Using a template, which we'll see today. They have very robust templates to help you get started because you get a little bit of that writer's block when you're staring at that white screen. The templates help you kind of form the chart you're trying to create. Second, arranging and connecting shapes. It's as simple as that, really. You drag and drop items around, give it some connectors, which we'll show here in a second, to show how items are related. And then finally, modifying those shapes with text. So you have all your shapes organized in the way that makes sense. Then you can add text to that, change the font, change the color, all of that fun stuff. And there's many kinds of Visio diagrams, as you can see here, including flowcharts, org charts, network diagrams, etc. The possibilities are really endless. So I like this slide because I took basically from Visio, which we'll see here in a minute, a number of templates that exist within Visio and just threw it on this slide, if you will. So you can see there's flowcharts here. There's SWOT analysis. There's hub and spoke models. There's one that looks like a pizza. There's a pie chart. There's a Venn diagram. The possibilities are endless. It's kind of like illustrating what is Microsoft Word. You can write a novel with Word. You can write You can write notes with Word. The possibilities are really up to you. But this is just to give some inspiration of, maybe things you're doing today in a different platform, things you're maybe even doing in PowerPoint here that you might be able to do within Visio much easier, and then copy that into your presentation or print that out into a poster or what have you. Any questions so far?
Nothing yet in the chat.
Perfect. So next we're going to talk about maybe something that is the biggest question for a lot of you is how much is it? So recently, even after I started here in June, Visio for 365 is now included with the base license of Office 365, which most people should have here on the call today. So it is no additional charge, very similar to Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Visio is now added into that list of available applications. Now, Visio for 365 sometimes gets a negative connotation because it is a quote unquote web version. As we'll see today, I think the web version is actually, unlike some other products, very well done. In fact, sometimes easier to use than other applications. And we'll talk about those differences here shortly. Visio Plan 2 is also available. We're going to talk about differences, as I mentioned, but it is an additional charge of $38.05 per year. It will be charged to your department in a chargeback model that was recently announced. And if by the end of this presentation, you think that that is the option you need to go with, you can request the license either in that link that's hyperlinked there, or Vanessa will be sending information following this presentation as well. So differences, and there's a lot. I'm not going to read this slide, and I even linked a KB article for any even bigger discussion of the differences between Visio for 365 and Visio Plan 2. I would say the biggest difference is the desktop application, right? So if you're comfortable with using it within Teams, within the web version, quick, easy charts, templates still exist, all of that. Real-time collaboration, just like Microsoft Word, you can comment in real time. All of that in the 365 version, it'll work perfectly for you. Plan 2 gives you access to the desktop app. That is Windows only. So if you're on a Mac workstation or a Linux workstation, you're not going to have luck there. So 365 is going to be the way you want to go. But Visio Plan 2 does give you access to additional templates, premium diagrams. I put an asterisk next to offline support there. If you are traveling a lot for your work duties or what have you, you may need the desktop application because obviously Windows or Visio for 365 does require an internet connection. But you can still export things into PDF. You can, screenshot them, what have you, to access your information offline. It's just making those edits that you'll need an internet connection. If you want to do any integrations, that's also only available with Plan 2. So things like Power Automate integrations, Power BI integrations, AutoCAD is one there. I'm not sure how much we use that here, but reverse database engineering, and then custom shapes too. If there's hyper complex things you want to build, Visio Plan 2 might be what you need. But by and large, and the demo we're going to give today, everything we're going to see today is available within the free included version of Visio for 365. So if you're kind of questioning which one do I want, I broke it down to this kind of easy question, right? So you should use the included version if you want to make simple diagrams, right? You want to make mind maps, you want to make org charts, you want to make network diagrams. And I will say they are adding a lot of custom shapes in here that was premium into the free version as of that recent announcement earlier this year, mid-year. So I would try the free version first. It's included. You can access it today right after this call. It is very straightforward to use, as you'll see here in the demo shortly. I'm trying to speed through the slides to get there, but I would start with 365 if you can. Another thing to keep in mind is it's built on collaboration. It's built within Teams. It's built within Microsoft 365. So if your goal is to share this information, which I would assume it would be if you're creating something like this, 365 actually makes it easier. It's already uploaded to OneDrive. It's easy to share with your teams. And if you don't need very specific shapes, as we'll see today, as I mentioned, they're adding a bunch more in. But if basic shapes, basic word charts, basic network diagrams just good enough, I think you'll be covered within the included version here. Paid version, should you request the paid version, to answer that question, if you absolutely need the full library of objects, there's different objects and icons and templates and things like that that either you're already using, if you're a historical user, or you really need to use for a work purpose. Absolutely, that's what it's there for. If you absolutely need to work online or offline, I'm sorry. So, if you do travel a lot for work, you're on airplanes a lot, no internet connection, that may be an option for you. Or if you, again, need to connect Visio to an external data source, SharePoint lists, SQL, Power Platform, etc., you'll probably need the paid version of that first, or to request the paid version instead. But as I mentioned, definitely try the free version first. I think it'll cover a lot of individuals' use cases. Any questions on any of that?
There was a quick question, Josh, on saving files. I think this is related to Visio for the O365 web-based version, whether you can store Visio files locally or a network drive with that version. I believe the answer that we would give is that those files would be stored in the cloud in the person's OneDrive folder.
That is correct, though you can export them. It's not going to do you a lot of good to export them in a Visio format if you don't have the full version, but you can export them in PDF. You can, export them as an image, things like that once they're complete. So it's the editing that'll be done in the cloud. The output of that, as long as it's saved as a PDF or something similar, can be then stored either locally or on a network drive or things like that. Great question.
We have another quick question about if you could repeat the cost of the paid version.
Yes, it is $38.05 per year. So it's not a ton of money, especially with our EDU discount. But we do charge that back to the organization. So you'll need approvals, fund numbers, things like that for that. We do have an extensive KB article for how to do that, reasons for doing that, links and all that will be included at the end of the presentation. Great questions. Any other ones?
No, not at this time. So you can move on.
Perfect. So keep in mind, this is sort of towards the end of the slides, and we can get into the good stuff. Keep in mind, Visio is a tool, right? So, you have to have a use for it. Otherwise, you will have that kind of writer's block of staring at a screen. It isn't Excel. There's use cases for Excel. It isn't Word. It isn't PowerPoint. It's just another tool in your toolkit. But I think there is a lot of good use cases, especially now that it's included for everybody. You maybe get away with making something like this in PowerPoint before. Now that it's included, we don't have to have that use. So before I jump into the demo, where do I access Visio? And again, in this presentation, we're going to focus on the Teams or web version. There's two ways to access it. One is within Teams, which I'll show here in a second. On the left-hand side of your Teams window, you click those three dots. Find Visio in your list. If you don't see it, search for it. It might not be visible at the top like mine is. Once you find it, if you right-click on it, you can actually say pin, and that will pin it to the left-hand side there next to your activity, chat, Teams, calendar, calls, files, etc. So easy access if you use it all the time. If you don't use it all the time, you can always keep going through that same process. Just click the three dots. It'll be up at the top if you use it semi-frequently at that point. You can also access it on the web. So if you go to office.com, hit the little waffle icon there. Again, you might not see it right away if you don't use it all the time. If you don't, click the All Apps button. But we're going to be demoing both options here today to kind of take a look at what that looks like. So I made this quick and easy diagram in Visio. We're going to do a live demo, so bear with me if weird things happen, as they usually do in live demos. But we're going to demo how to access it, what the file storage looks like, because it is a little bit confusing if you're not used to it. We're going to create a drawing, place objects, add shapes, modify connectors, do some editing, show the comments, show if you're going to print, best practices for that. And then we'll end with some dedicated time for Q&A. But I can't stress enough, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to stop me, put them in the chat, and we can even bend the demo to the questions. So with that, as I jump into my demo, if anybody has any questions before that, now is a great time.
Seems to be no questions at this time, Josh, but I have a quick question. Did you use the web-based free version for the basic diagram here?
I absolutely did.
There
Yes.
you
So
go.
I can't stress enough, I get it, as a Microsoft consultant for almost a decade, if not a little more than a decade. Um, the web version's scary. When people say web version, it's almost like, oh, I got demoted. I only get the web version. That was true a while back. There was a lot of limitations, but nowadays, even with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's mostly fine. I actually built this presentation in the online version of PowerPoint, so I practice what I preach. But the Visio application, I think, is very, very well done, because it's kind of built in that mindset of cloud first. So we'll take a look at that here now. So
Okay.
in Teams here, ignore the fact that it's in a browser. It's just for a demo purpose. You can click on these three dots. Again, I see Visio right at the front because I've been playing with it in preparation for this a bunch. But if you just search for Visio, you'll see it here. Just click on it to get it to launch. It'll be over here. You can either right click and pin it here, or as I mentioned in my demonstration, you can also do it as you're searching for it. So once you find Visio, right click, pin, and it'll stay here for you if you use it all the time. So you can see what it looks like here within Teams. Unsurprisingly, if we do it over here within office.com, it'll look very similar. So we just go to office.com, hit these icons appear. Again, I have it. If you don't, you can click explore all your apps. It'll take you to this new page. Click on all apps, and you'll find it in this list here. And with that, we'll get started with the demo. So this is Visio for the web. Notice at the top, it kind of gives you templates for creating new ones. These are the most used templates. We're going to be playing with this one here today, and maybe an org chart here too if we have time. But you can look at all of the templates. There is a bunch. So that's why I mention always take a look at this first. All of these I pulled from that slide earlier from this page here. Go through all of these general ones, pyramid, matrix. This one's kind of cool. I liked that one, maybe even for roadmap type stuff. These flowchart ones is kind of a default what you think of when you think of Visio. So you could do a basic flowchart, and we'll see what changes when we click on one of these here in a second. But I just want to see, given that I'm in IT, network diagrams, this one was a premium one, along with AWS up until very recently. So this is an example of them adding a lot of free content into this, or included content, I should say. There's just so much here that we could spend hours discussing. So definitely check this out before you request the full version. Again, the full version is relatively cheap, but if it's not needed, it's easier just to use the included one, of course. I always thought this one was kind of cool too, little leaf. And then once you find one that you really like, if you note down the name of it, you can just search for all these templates here. So it's always best to start with templates, and I'll show you why in a second here once we get into the editing, but it'll actually show you some recommended files from the ones that you've been building, so you can see a lot of the tests I've been doing in preparation for this meeting. But if you scroll down to the very bottom of this page, and this is the same in the Teams version, whichever one you're using, it'll show you all of your Visio files. These are stored within OneDrive, so they are in the cloud. At the very bottom, you'll see how many local or total files you have. It will include local counts if you have the Plan 2 version for local. And it'll actually show you who owns it too. So if we go over to ones that are shared with me, you can see I have some that are sent over from other individuals. Recently opened is typically where I interact. As you're building these out, the ones at the top will be the ones that you've opened most recently. But you can click through these and change your filters. I think there's, activity. You can see the number of filters you have there. And then also time. So ones you worked on yesterday, last week, or last month. One question I get asked a lot, so I'll just answer that now, is if you have a file, maybe you had Visio Plan 2 in the past, you can upload it here by clicking this upload button or just drag and dropping it over here. One interesting thing to keep in mind here is you may encounter an error if that Plan 2 document, that local document, is using an advanced item, be it either a data connection, be it a custom template, be it whatever, it'll give you an alert that says this is not available with your current license tier. If you get that error and you're okay kind of recreating it within the limitations that we have here, and I think those limitations are fairly small now, but if that's an option for you, I recommend doing that, because then you'll kind of fix that problem from now moving forward. If it is absolutely required that you use whatever custom template that thing is using, it's at that point you will need a Plan 2 license, and then it'll allow you to upload it. So even if you have the Plan 2 license, you're not required to use the desktop version. You still get everything you can see here today, but that's just one of those nuances to keep in mind. Lastly, we have favorites. So if you have documents you're editing all the time, or ones you're referencing all the time, you can right-click on any of these documents within all. That's not a right-click. You can right-click on any of these and say favorite, and it'll be shown here. Any questions on any of that?
Not yet.
Okay, making this easy on me.
Oh, someone just asked, how do you get
Sure.
to the templates again? Can you just show how you
broke up. I didn't catch that. What was it?
Oh, just Melissa asked, how do you get to the templates again?
Yes. So and once you go to Visio again in Teams, it's the same. But click here, find Visio. This is the landing page you'll get to, and right at the top, it's create new. It starts with blank, and it gives you some default ones here, but clicking all templates will show you the whole list.
Thank you.
Great question. Awesome. So we are going to, with that, use a template here. I'm going to just do a basic flow chart. I think this is when people think Visio, at least when I think Visio, this is what I think of. But keep in mind, again, that was a great question for this transition. There is a ton here that I wouldn't have even thought of to build. I mean, this funnel diagram is so cool, and I would have not been able to do that from scratch. So, it's nice to browse that to get some inspiration for sure. But let's go ahead and do a flow chart so you can see what it looks like. I'm just going to do a basic overview of the ribbon up here. It's very similar to other applications, which I assume most of you should be familiar with, so I won't waste too much of your time. But we have the file section here, pretty straightforward, similar to other items within the 365 stack. All of your recent files, you can create a new file from here. You can open files from here, print to something we'll talk about shortly. Basically, this is the same as other 365 applications. Similarly, the home screen, you have your undo, redo, paste stuff. All of that's pretty straightforward. Your font, bolds, centers, text boxes, your colors are here. Everything is very streamlined and easy to use up top. In Insert, you can upload custom pictures if you have them. So if you click on that, it'll ask you, hey, from any of these items that I have saved here, do you have something you want to include? So that is possible with the free included version. You can also search for royalty-free images as well. I like to depict airplanes first. That's Microsoft learning about me, I think. Or you can look at your stock images. Stock images and this online pictures is kind of the same, because you'll notice this is using royalty-free Creative Commons only. You can uncheck that at your own risk, as it says here. Text box, pretty straightforward there too. Draw shape, I want to skip that for now. Comments. So comments is a fun one. There's multiple ways to access comments. You can access it here in the Insert tab. Review is kind of where comments live. Multiple ways to do the same thing there. But comments is a great way if you're working on something with somebody to kind of keep on the same page, rather than sending emails back and forth, rather than even sending Teams messages back and forth. Including the comments right here in the document you're working on is a great way to have everybody stay on the same page. So you can right click on this image, for instance, add a new comment and say, let's see, what is this? Another thing that's really interesting about this, and I really like, is the @mention ability. So I can @ a manager, Raphael, and say, what kind of plane is this? because I know we both share an interest in aviation. Now, what that will do, as you can see here, is automatically say, hey, you're at mentioning somebody that doesn't have access, so they're never going to be able to see what you're talking about. So if you hit share and notify, it will actually grant him access for you rather than you having to go and share it. And it'll also send him a notification, not only that he's been shared this file, but it'll send him a notification saying, hey, Josh has at mentioned you in this. And if I just pause really quickly to open my Outlook here, I should have an example of this from yesterday. So this is what it will look like from a test I did yesterday. I could say this is a test, and I at mentioned myself. This is another interesting use case. Some people email themselves for a to-do list. You can do that. You can at mention yourself and say, this is where I left off, or something like that. But this is an example of what the email will look like. If you at mention another person, they will be able to click this link here and go straight to the document. This is something we're going to build here later. Any questions on any of that? I think that's one of the most powerful features of the cloud version, right? So if you're offline, if you're working on Visio on the desktop, you're working by yourself, you don't have access to all of this comments features either. If you have Plan 2, the desktop version does support comments, so you'll be able to do this with the desktop version. But I think it's just very streamlined in the online version here. Any questions?
One question from Robert. What advantages over creating images with PowerPoint? I guess what advantages do you have in Visio over creating images with PowerPoint?
Great question. So that's typically what people would do in the past without access to Visio, right? There is shapes, there is everything I'm doing right here you can do in PowerPoint. What is beneficial for that is the integrations of, I'm going to add 2 objects. I'm going to hover over here and add a connector. Yes, you could do that in PowerPoint. I would argue it's much easier in Visio. Even making custom, maybe you want it to be exactly right there. That's kind of annoying to do within PowerPoint. So to some degree, you're right, PowerPoint can do basic flow diagrams. You won't get the templates. You won't get as robust of these connectors, these automatic type, trying to put it in a way that makes sense type connectors. So I think it just goes above and beyond a little bit what's possible within PowerPoint. But you're absolutely right. Basic diagrams like we're talking about now absolutely could be done in PowerPoint as well. Great question. Any other ones? I thought I saw the chat go up a little bit.
It looks like there's somebody who's having an issue in Visio, but I'll send that to you afterward to review.
Okay, perfect. So note, as I did that, it actually removes your comments as well. So if you just no longer want that thing, deleting it gets rid of it. So I like how connected that is. I'll jump right into printing real quick, because I know that's a thing that people like. I have a love-hate relationship with printers, so I don't do it a lot. But if you notice, my Visio may look different than what yours looks like. I think by default, these 2 checkboxes are on. And these 2 checkboxes are pretty important. So page breaks and grid. You can have the grid. I'll start there if you like it. I tend to like a clean slate, so the grid paper is not something I typically leave on, but you can customize it as well for how much zoom basically you want. By default, I think is that 0.3. So if you like that to help align things, sometimes it's handy even just to turn on for a second to make sure things are aligned the way you want it. But this snap to grid is kind of handy, to make sure you're aligning things appropriately. If you're aligning 2 objects, you don't need the grid, right? So it's going to align it reference to this other object. But just something to keep in mind under this view tab here in the ribbon, it might be something you want to take a look at if you enjoy that. The other thing is page breaks. So the page breaks will show how it's going to be printed. So this is an example of a vertical Visio form. If you would extend past what was possible on a standard sheet of paper, it will add a new piece of paper. Now, if you do this without the page breaks, it does the same thing. It just doesn't give you the reference of the paper because it doesn't matter, right? So if you're not going to print it, I tend to leave page breaks off because it just is extra stuff that doesn't really matter if you're not planning to print it. But if you are planning to print it, that's one big thing about Visio is if you have this crazy big, actually, let me use this one here. If you have this big diagram that we're gonna sort of build here today, and I turn on the page breaks, it's gonna be really annoying, right? So maybe you want to change the text. You want to make it smaller and rearrange your Visio a little bit to not have three landscape pieces of paper you need to interact with. The other thing to keep in mind is in the design tab here in the ribbon, it auto sizes for you, which is helpful, right? So if you're doing one of these, it'll expand the box for you. But size is important if you are going to be printing, right? So if you're going to be printing on a standard letter 8.5 by 11, but you can also change it to legal paper, executive, or even bigger pieces of paper that we may have access to. That will help you with your page breaks. So if you aren't printing on a standard piece of paper, keep in mind in design here, you can change it to what you are printing on, up to and including a custom. And that will help you kind of plan out how big you're allowed to have for that piece of paper. Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
No questions on that, but someone, Josh, did have a question on if animations are supported in Visio, and I just mentioned that not typically, PowerPoint is where you would want to go for animated slides. Visio, it's not its strength.
Correct. Now, what I will say to that is, PowerPoint does have pretty powerful animations, especially if you're kind of transitioning into a similar slide. So what you can do is save steps of this along the way, right? So if you would start here, do a screenshot, paste that into your PowerPoint, and then you had, this is obviously a stupid example, but then you'd have another thing, take a screenshot, paste it into your PowerPoint. You can use the power of PowerPoint transitions, but still have the flexibility of the Visio here. So that might be something to consider. Or even if you're just highlighting things, right? So if you have a number of objects and you're going to go through each one, maybe, and this is a good example, we'll change this one to orange. So take a screenshot of this for one of your slides, and then change this one to orange. Screenshot of that for one of your slides. You can use these tools kind of in conjunction. Awesome. Okay, so we talked about these, the design tab, we talked about most of it. Orientation, similar to other applications we have, either portrait or landscape, depending on what makes sense for use case. Again, that really only matters if you're going to be printing it. So if you turn off page breaks, it doesn't really matter because wherever you plop something, it's going to kind of auto-fill that for you. So you kind of have an endless grid there. We talked about comments, kind of jumped around here, so I just want to make sure we're covering that all. And then the help section, you can use the help section. We're going to give you some reference material as well at the end of this, but also keep in mind, that's what I'm here for. That's what me and my team do. So if you need any assistance for having any trouble, or if you just want to brainstorm some things, reach out. I'd be happy to help you out. Okay, so let's do a kind of a quick and easy, one of my favorite flow charts that I have. So one thing I'll touch on before we do that, I guess, is this shape section. I didn't mention this yet. Based on the template, these will be different, right? So if I go to this guy, notice there's more here. I was playing with a cat or a dog. There's a ton of these. Again, we could spend all day looking through these. They're kind of fun. Based on your template, it just basically gives you the default objects that are available based on what was used in the template that you see. So that one we saw, that was a leaf, the leaves will be in there. The funnel one, the funnel shapes will be in there. But you can technically start blank and add your own and do the same thing. It just gives you that starting point. So ones that probably make the most sense here for an actual business use case and not just cats and dogs is computers and monitors, network, even weather. If you're doing something with weather, this list goes on, and it's also searchable. So if you're doing something with Microsoft Azure, you can click that and it'll show you the objects in the different object collections, right? So these are the object collections or shape collections. These are the specific shapes. So if we just search for Azure, it'll show all of the items that have access, and that you have access to, and it will also tell you if you don't have access to it, you need to upgrade your license tier. So it's very easy to see kind of where the limit is, and if you can stay within the limits of the included version or not. So if we would search for cat, we'll see the one here that we were working with. Yeah, catering. Okay, that's funny. So you just keep in mind, you can search for the object you're looking for, and it'll go through all of those shape packages for you. You don't have to kind of click and look through each one if you're looking for something specific. But just for the purposes of showing some connectors, we'll do kind of a basic diagram here. So we'll start with a square here. Just click and drag it into the frame. If you double click in it, it's where the text box thing will open, and you can say the engineering flowchart is what we're going to be doing. So does it move? This is a famous one that I always thought was kind of funny. So we'll make that a little bigger. We can change the theme if we want. I'm going to probably just leave it the color it is, but if you want to change the theme colors, you can. Maybe make it orange. Doesn't matter. Whatever you like. But that will save you from having to make the change for each specific item. So we'll say, does it move? And we'll have a decision tree here. Actually, let's change it. So I'll show what that means. If that's a decision tree, let's just put it in here. And we'll make it a little bigger. Awesome. And then we'll have another 2 decisions. Should it move? And we'll make it a little bigger. We'll increase the size. And you can copy and paste these objects. Make sure it lines up right. Perfect. So then creating connectors. Now we have enough objects for a connector. If you hover over an object, it gives you the connectors that makes the most sense, right? So top, bottom, left, and right of that object. If you have a process, it'll be the same thing, the 4 corners. But you can actually do it anywhere you want. If you just give it a second and hover over, you'll notice that little green bubble appear, and you can make it be wherever you want if that makes the most sense to you. So that's one thing that is an easy trick that sometimes makes sense. Use the ones that are default if you can, because it makes the most sense in most cases. But if you need it to be a unique place, you can hover over it and then hover over the location you want it to be as well. One thing to keep in mind with this, I believe it's in the design tab, you can have a connector style. So if you like right angles, you can do that. Maybe you want them all to be straight lines, you can do that, or curved lines, just a style, whatever makes sense to you. This diagram layout's kind of powerful too, but be careful. It tries to take whatever flowchart you're working with and put it into the format that makes the most sense. So, we're doing a flowchart. Obviously, it pretty much is the same. You can reverse it. You can make it left and right instead. Or if you had like a circular thing, you could do that as well. Keep in mind that can be dangerous, so undo is your friend, but it might help you organize things if you're not really sure how you want to organize it. If you click and drag, you can select all of the things, or just Control A or Command A, depending on your operating system. And double-clicking on a connector will allow you to add some information to that as well. So it doesn't move, yes or no. Then we have should it move, yes or no. And there's going to be basically 4 outcomes from that. So we'll add those in. Actually, I lied. We should probably make that a process rather than a diamond. And stop me if you have any questions as we go through this. I'm not paying attention to the chat, so feel free to stop.
Yeah, that was just a quick question about, if you can make softer or curved arrows and connectors. And I know you mentioned it. I saw the option as well. The answer is yes. The arrows and connectors are very customizable. And just a quick time check. We're at 12:40 now. Perfect.
That's about perfect time. Awesome. So then we have should it move, and we'll go here, here. You guys probably know where this is going if you're familiar with this joke on the internet. So should it move? We'll give it, again, just double click for yes or no. And you can move that around if you wanted to. I'm not bothering for the sake of time, but you can change the location of this word as well as the size of the word if you cared. Again, like this, sometimes the connector doesn't exactly look the best. So if you just click on that, you can kind of adjust what it looks like. make it look a little better. Guess I lied. I am moving the words a little bit just because it bugged me. Okay, so does it move? Yes or no? Should it move? Yes or no? If it's does it move? Yes. Should it move? Yes. No problem. Does it move? No. Should it move? No. No problem. Does it move? Yes. Should it move? No. Duct tape. Does it move? No. Should it move? Yes. WD-40. All right, so now we have a diagram. We could go to this diagram layout and see what it looks like. That's just going to center it for us because we are following that template. We can reverse it if we want to, see what that looks like. Maybe we like that, maybe we don't. We could make it kind of a more horizontal type view. So this would be a real pain to move all these around yourself, right? So you can kind of click through them and see what makes the most sense. Sometimes this totally messes up and it's annoying, so undo is your friend. Any questions with any of that basic diagram stuff? Okay. Once we go into, we talked about the themes. So if we wanted to change it all to like orange, we can, rather than having to do it all, but you can also just select all and maybe make the text all the same. If you wanted to make it bold or not, it's by default centered, but if you didn't want that, you could change it. These are all basic type stuff I'm not going to waste your time with. One important thing, though, I will say, and this is important for pretty much all these applications across the board, this will kind of get out of its own way there, but sometimes it's not possible. Like if you wanted to do like an overlap type thing, these layer options, this kind of showing them all, but this is helpful and it's the same in PowerPoint and Word, etc. You can send it to the back, send it to the front, whatever makes the most sense. But I like how it tries to get out of its own way for you. And then we have a basic diagram. One thing that is probably the most used in Visio is an org chart. So we'll show that one too, just to see a different kind of view. Org chart. One thing I didn't mention in the other one, but it's important, renaming it up at the top. You can see I haven't been doing that, but it's probably good to do. And it also autosaves. So a couple of times I've accidentally backed out of this and it does autosave. So keep in mind, the location it's putting it is helpful too. That's default. Change its name just so you're not confused, and then keep an eye on the autosave just in case. So org charts, if you want to do one for your organization, just as a quick quick and dirty thing, we can do Michael Scott. If you like The Office, notice it'll change that dynamically, but you can also plop a picture in there if you wanted. And you can see how these shapes on the left-hand side are totally different now, right? But again, we could have found these ones ourselves. We could have searched for rollout org chart in the other one and kind of made it our own. It'll show you by default all of the ones that are related to that in that template. So maybe we didn't like that look. Maybe you want it to be this way. Or maybe we wanted it this way. Same thing. So you could just click through these and whatever makes the most sense for your use case. Oh, I didn't mention this last one, but that's an important one. Shapes in the document. So once you have a bigger document, you want to reuse a shape rather than having to find it again, which is a real pain, I've noticed. The last button on all of them is shapes in this document. So it's going to need to update. So ignore these ones, but you can kind of just keep using the same one if you wanted to. So again, we'll go back up here because this is one we're using. We'll go over to I don't know, manager. It's ERT. I can't type. It's auto changing the size of this for me too, because manager kind of needed to be bumped, but you can change that and it'll change the shape size based on what's needed. But then it won't technically match that, so keep that in mind. It might make sense then to take the whole thing and maybe just bump it down a little bit. So then again, we have a relation between these two. We'll go down that they report to Michael. And maybe we want to have an assistant. You can move that as well. Notice if I'm hovering over this, it really wants that button to be there. But you can hover over any part of it that you want. I tend to just go by what it says because I think it makes it easier. But it's up to you. So
And just a quick time check again, Josh. We're at 12:45, so not sure if we wanted to save a little time for any questions that may come in.
yep, I'm almost ready. So again, I'm not gonna go through the whole cast, of course, but one thing to keep in mind with all of these is the format of each one of these items, right? So again, it will autofill these items, but if you wanted to paste an image in there, you can. But you can change the node for each one. So maybe you wanted this type or that type. You can do it after the fact. So this happens to me a lot when I'm making these diagrams. You know, if you go through, then you go over here and you're like, oh man, I really wish I used X, Y, or Z. You can select them all and just change the node all at once. And it keeps the types, right? So this was, I think, the director or executive. This was the manager, and this is an assistant. It'll keep all of those items for you. So it's very handy to take a look at this side section over here. You can see employee fields. It's based on this object type that you picked, right? Because it knows that this is an org chart. It knows that you might want name and title, but you also may want department. You also may want telephone, email, address. Again, this will be different for each. This whole tab, honestly, will be different for each object type that you pick. But it's important to keep an eye on that because you can have that template for you much easier. And then again, similar to the item up here that we were playing with, the diagram layout, this will give you different layout options for the specific template that you're using and also the direction that you're using. Cool. And with that, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, one last thing is the printing. So keep in mind, again, page breaks. This does fit on one page. So if you wanted to go up here, you can save it. If you want to save as, if you wanted to make another page, but you can also print. It'll open the PDF. And this obviously is available offline. So this will save locally. Now you can't edit it, you can't modify it, which is the limitation there. If you need to do that offline, that's where Plan 2 comes in. But you'll be able to send this around, email this around, and have a copy offline if you need it. And that's it. With that, I'll open up for about 12 minutes left for any questions you guys have, any other things you want to take a look at.
We have a question from David. I know you mentioned Azure shapes, but does it also have cloud service provider shapes for mapping things like AWS solutions or GCP solutions?
Great question. So yes, it does. AWS is in here. I'm not as familiar with AWS, but there should be a good number of those objects in there. GCP, I'm not sure about. I've never tried. Doesn't look like it.
So Josh, also one thing to look out for is that I think you may have the full license as well. So you
Correct.
may see shapes that folks using the web version will not see. That's just the only caveat.
Correct. Very good call out. And the other thing to mention with that is some of these you may not see. So if you don't see some of these items, for instance, that are required in Plan 2, the generic ones will also be there. So if you search for cloud, you may not see AWS and other and what have you, but you will see network locations. So depending on the audience, if you're making like a basic diagram for a proof of concept type deal or whatever, that might be sufficient for you. But there is a big stack of other icons there as well. Good question.
Another question from Stan. We're looking to create an operations flow for the whole academic year for our department. Is there a template for a yearly calendar that's zoomable? Is there an open source database online for Visio templates? And can ITS assist or provide support with a Visio project?
Great question. So a couple of questions in there. The templates, I'm not super familiar with all of them because there's a ton. I would recommend going here and flipping through these. It sounds like Matrix might be what you want. I'm not sure. Yeah, it doesn't look like they have any calendar specific ones, but Matrix might work for you there. But I was surprised even when I went through these and took a look. So depending on the specific use case, this might give you some inspiration on that. Um, all of them are pretty interactable and online. I can't really speak to that either. I do know that Microsoft has some on their web pages that is additional to this, I believe. It kind of gives you a starting point. So I would make sure it's a Microsoft web page before downloading something sketchy. As far as support, yeah, we can obviously help you out. I'm not sure how detailed we can get without knowing the process, but if there's an issue you're having, if you're experiencing any errors or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me and I can point you in the right direction.
There were a couple questions earlier that I was looking into while you were presenting, Josh. A couple people said that they couldn't see the all templates option. And just so everybody knows, if you're having issues seeing the all templates, it looks like you can see that in the O365.while or office.com version. But if you try to do it through Teams, that option does not appear. So if you're looking for the all templates, log into your O365 or office.com account.
Great call out. Yes, most of the features that we talked about today should be feature parity, but you're right, some of them are required for the online version. And that's kind of best practice in general. I think if you're going to be doing a heavy lifting, opening up in a separate browser is probably best.
I think we might have answered everyone's questions. I'm just double checking. Oh, did we just get one more? No, that was about something else. Okay. Yeah, I think we got to everyone's questions. Are there any more before we wrap up? I just wanted to make sure. Feel free to pop it in the chat or maybe even raise your hand. Yep. And happy to unmute you really quick.
I think there's a couple of folks that are having maybe some persistent issues. I think we can follow up with them after the call, in a separate session, Vanessa.
Yeah, I have the chat saved, so I'll send that to you just to make sure you have everybody's names.
Yeah, like I think Katsuri Chandra mentioned that they cannot get something, so we can always follow up with them.
Oh, and then David just asked a really quick question I missed. Can you create your own shapes and save and share them for later use?
That's a Plan 2 feature. So if you need that, that is Plan 2. There's usually a way to get around a lot of the things that are needed for Plan 2. So one option that I interact with a lot is the uploading a picture. So if you have, I don't know, something that you want, maybe this airplane is a good example. If I had this saved, you can crop this, interact with this just as any other picture and then upload that. So I've seen a lot of people do that for kind of getting around the paid version for Azure. Even if you have an image for Azure that is sufficient, that might be something to do. But if you truly need to have a custom shape itself, that would be a Plan 2 feature.
All right, I think we got everyone's questions. So thank you guys so much for attending this session. If you do have a question that you think of after today, I am sending out again a follow-up email with a link to this recording and all of the links that Josh has provided here, as well as, we've got a tip up video about how to access Visio in case you have questions in the future. So feel free to check out that follow-up email and then just reply back if there are any other questions that you can think of, and we'll definitely help out as best as we can with whatever use case that you might have. So Josh, thank you again for showing us this great demonstration, and Raphael for answering a ton of questions in the chat. And thank you all for taking some time today to learn more about Microsoft Visio. Hope this was helpful to get you started on your next Visio project.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Take care.